Welcome to a little bit of R&R with Russ and Rob. I am on little sleep. We were trying to find a replacement for Streamlabs. All of them suck. So we went to support instead. So we'll see if Rob's camera fails at some point. How are you feeling, Rob?
It might just be kicking Dad and I off because we're ugly. So it's like,
Yeah, who
so
knows? Whatever.
we're
I'll
in
be
it.
honest with you. So you and Dad were 2 for 2, although boy was the Niners one in doubt for a while. My God, could we not? It's funny. I'd asked Rob before the game, do we want a tough game or a blowout? My heart needed a blowout because I've aged about 47 years in about 2 weeks. Gosh, I know for a fact we can't do that against the Chiefs because the Chiefs were rolling against the Ravens.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start because there was two completely different games, like just
They,
beyond
when the
different.
Chiefs don't allow a second half point, so
Correct.
but that's just a stat, right? At the end of the day, they've done it against some of those were bad teams, but it started with the Bills, and then it ended up being Miami, the Bills, and three playoff teams in there. So you can't just be like, "What was the Raiders and this team and that team?" There's good teams sprinkled in there.
Well,
So
and teams unable to execute. I mean, Miami came in on a losing streak, and this isn't anything against the Bills, but of course the Bills missed a field goal wide right. Ravens, to me, it was actually in a weird way similar to the Lions, is that you could tell how young they were. Because that's
yeah,
the drops from the Lions, the stupid taunting penalty by Flowers, followed up by reaching, which we talked about. Don't reach.
yeah,
Lamar, just, you could tell the pressure got to him. He was pressing. He was trying. And again, this is weird to me. Purdy had about the same amount of rushing yards as Lamar Jackson. That's not normal. It's not like Purdy's
no,
rushing for 600 yards in a year. Like, that was
no,
okay. Situationally, I need to run, and the number of times I watched Lamar just refuse the run was mind-boggling to me because they were opportunities. There was room
yeah.
for him to kind of maneuver, but it was like, no, I got to throw it. It's like, okay, there's a time to do one or the other, and you can do both. It's okay.
Well, and I don't know to the level of what I actually don't totally remember some of his injuries. I know he had like sprains and different stuff on one of the knees last year or whatnot, but I don't remember
Yeah.
what his other injuries were. And I think it was the Rich Eisen show. They were talking about how rookie or sophomore year, Lamar would have just taken that one run to the house. When
Yep.
he busted out of there, I was like, "Oh no, that's a score!" Like instantly a score. But he was worried about Snead, which, I mean, Snead's fast. He's a really good corner. I assume he's 4.4 like most corners, or maybe faster. I don't know, but yeah, I thought he was taking that to the house, but he didn't. But the whole, I don't know if you want to start Ravens, Chiefs, or if you want to go
I honestly, we
Niners,
could do either.
Lions.
They're
But
so different. It's kind of crazy how, like, complete opposite scripts.
right, yeah. Well, I guess I mean, let's just keep with the Ravens Chiefs then, because the it's the question that gets brought up a lot on any sports talk is, did the Ravens lose it or did the Chiefs win it? And obviously it's always a little bit of both, but the Ravens had so many opportunities. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
I feel like the Bills game was like that with the Chiefs too. The Bills had tons of opportunities, and the only
Hmm.
mistake the Chiefs made was a similar fumble to Zay Flowers.
Right.
Whereas, Bills, I felt like were trying to give the game away. But as a good team, you capitalize on that. Same with the Ravens. Someone also brought up the point that the mystique of Lamar, or not Lamar, of Mahomes,
Hmm.
is palpable. Like you can feel it. Um, when they went up 14-0, Baltimore was like, "We're not running the ball ever again,"
Yeah, which
and they
was
didn't.
weird.
They didn't run the ball. Now, I was telling people, so my church had like a men's thing where we had the games on, and unfortunately, everyone wanted to leave before the Niners game, so I
Really?
missed half of it.
Oh.
Yeah, well, yeah, everyone. Well, people have kids, so they got to go home,
Well, in fairness,
and
it's
then
East Coast. They're probably not like a huge
the
contingent of Niner fans.
the and they're not gonna watch all. No Niner. There's like one Niner fan at my
Hmm.
church, and everyone wanted the Lions because it's a great story, um, which it is. But it's also a good story that Purdy's going there, but or to the Super Bowl in the second year. But they all ended up leaving. So I was talking to a couple of the guys that were hanging around as we were trying to clean up, and then it was bath time when I got home. So Peyton was in the bath, so I missed. I was only getting your text that was updating me, which was not great. So I
No, I was
missed
so
most
angry.
of.
I was so
Luckily, I
mad.
missed most of the first half, but yeah, a lot of people were also Ravens going for the Ravens because they're like Mahomes is there every year, yada yada. I'm like, I kind of like a juggernaut. I want build up this, and then I just like watching greatness, to be honest with you. Um,
Well,
but
listen,
I
real
think,
quick. I'm a huge wrestling
yeah,
fan. Which is more fun to cheer against? The big villain or the good guy? You're like, oh, I want the. He keeps. How does he keep getting away with it? That's a great story, and I get people
yeah,
get tired of it, but you're going to tune in to see can you knock out the champ? Like,
right.
it is what it is.
No one cares if it constantly cycles. I'll get back to Ravens in a second. So
Hmm.
like me being a CrossFit person, there's been two guys have won four in a row. Then he went to like do team stuff, not like team CrossFit stuff, because it's a little easier in the sense of like you don't have to. It's not as strenuous throughout the year. Um, uh, One guy won it, so it was four. One guy won it, then the next guy won five.
Good
So
lord.
four then five. So we had and there's like like something to that of can this guy get beat? And I think that's a really cool part of it. Instead of like if the Lions and the Bills made it, like the Bills haven't been in years. Great story, but then next year it would be like, can they get back? And it's
Hmm.
like, well, that's the story with the Chiefs. You guys are just bored with it. He's literally the greatest ever up to this point. He's tied for the second most wins in the playoffs. He's really good. Enjoy watching him. It's kind of like people get annoyed with LeBron going to the finals every year. Oh, we lose this. It's like, well, he's the best option. So I don't know what to tell you.
Well, to pivot
Um,
real quick, so there's two interesting things to me, and I think we start with the more fun one. Are we watching this generation's Michael Jordan of football? Because I think we are, which is a little frightening if you're a Niners fan, by the way, because Jordan didn't lose. I get Mahomes has lost one, but he was losing. He had two of his starting offensive linemen out, and it required them to make him run around like a chicken with its head cut off for 4 quarters to beat him. So I think it's a legitimate argument that he is this generation's Michael Jordan. And what does that mean then? Like, has he already, even without the rings, surpassed people like Brady and Montana? Like,
yeah.
it's an interesting question.
Well, and he's only lost to Brady. He lost to Brady twice in the playoffs. In the Super Bowl, when his offensive line was you and me.
Yeah,
And then he lost in the conference championship game to Brady as well when his defense was garbage.
right.
Right now, he actually has a great defense, and he lost to Burrow, which is a Brady-esque person, right? Or people make that they attribute that to him. But it would be funny if Brady ends up being more of the LeBron, where it's and Mahomes, I think, will pass him in pretty much all the stats anyway.
Yeah.
But Brady's been to 10. What if Mahomes only gets to 6, but he wins all 6? A very Jordan
Hmm.
LeBron argument, right? LeBron's been there 10 years, 10 times, lost 6, but he's won 4 on 3 different teams, and he's done a back to back. So like he has some level of um, the things that some of the what Jordan has done, but Jordan is 6-0. Luckily, Mahomes already lost one, so he's got that off his back where he doesn't have to worry about that. But that mystique of this dude's only lost to Burrow could end up being a top 5 quarterback ever if
If
he
he
stays
stays healthy.
healthy. Possibly. He had, I mean, at least he had the best college season ever, which was crazy. Which also makes sense. He had Justin Jefferson
Hmm.
and Jamar Chase. And
messed
those
up,
are
dude. That's cheat
possibly the
codes.
two best.
I'm assuming
Someone's
that's
in
dad.
balloons. It's very strange. It's not my birthday. It's not my birthday for a while.
So,
Um, Maybe he likes the
uh,
point, but
that's
like
hilarious.
he's only lost to the best quarterbacks and or teams. Otherwise, he's got 14 wins and 3 losses. Are you kidding? Like that's a great regular season. That's the guy's postseason. So that mystique that he brings to the playoffs, where even in an off year, like he's technically had now, if his wide receivers caught the ball, he's got probably 5 more touchdowns. And if he didn't kneel down one of the time, like
Yeah,
his numbers look way better and less interceptions. They still think he's going to drive the ball down and go score.
yeah. He,
Like
he
that's
has that
what's
problem of you don't want him to have the ball.
so the Ravens were just pressing the whole time. They abandoned the run. Lamar felt like he had to throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball, which I don't know why he threw that pick in the end zone.
Oh, that was
Just
so bad. But
just very predetermined.
here's the thing. You know who it looked like? The exact same throw Baker Mayfield made at the end of the game. It's that I need a play, and you tunnel vision, and you just okay. And unfortunately, I mean, think about it, right? Not that Goff ended with a pick, but the amount of drops and missed throws. Baker ends with a pick. Lamar ends basically with a pick. Like, that's what we're going to remember. Obviously, remember Bills for wide right, but we're remembering it for the drops. People forget, especially in the playoffs, because all of that, whoever wins, all of that other stuff kind of goes away unless you're a fan of that team. Is during the postseason, it's really a matter of did you execute the most times consistently for 60 minutes. And that's right now why Brady was so good. It's why Mahomes is so good. Is Mahomes is like, listen, I'm not giving you the ball. I'm not going to get picked off. I'm not going to do something stupid. I don't care if I only throw for 100 yards and 10 of them are behind the line of scrimmage. We're going to win by just being more efficient than you. And especially this year, I can't even the Niners. Like, Purdy had the bad pick. I get that his hand got hit. I still don't think Debo was open.
He wasn't open at
No.
all. It would have just been a faster pick.
A couple of people who watch film think he might have been able to get it over. I don't care. So Purdy
But
will
then
give
maybe
you.
it gets tipped and it goes to a safety who's
Yeah.
faster. Maybe it's a pick six then.
Yeah, I don't. I find that hard to believe that. I just think that's a pick. But every other team in the playoffs, you were gonna be able to get a couple turnovers on. The only team that just doesn't turn it over is Kansas City. They just don't give you that opportunity.
And that's the postseason. They obviously had some struggles during the year, but in the postseason they've not given much. It's just been the Hardman fumble. But yeah, it's something interesting that to the Baker Mayfield thing. I thought he played awesome in that game, and unfortunately, just the last play was him trying to make a play because his defense wasn't doing anything against.
No, I was actually surprised.
What was it? It was the Lions, right? That they were playing. Yeah, it's unfortunate because Baker actually I thought played really well, and he already had another pick, but I mean they were oddly. And maybe not oddly because Brady was there prior, and Brady never ran the ball as he got older, kind of like Peyton. We just run the ball to make sure the linebackers come up a little bit. We know we're getting 3 yards and that's it. But Baker wants a run game, but they can't run the ball for crap.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense. It's probably because they all said Fournette and he's old, not as good. But yeah, the Ravens, man, that Zay Flowers, he's awesome. I was making the point to someone at where I was watching it that he is, other than Lamar, he's the other superstar. He's the one that led him in receiving because Mark Andrews wasn't the guy that day.
No.
Right? He'd been out a few weeks. Flowers, he had 115 yards. He was killing it.
Yep.
So in the sense of I don't mind him trying to score, but I had heard someone else, like, if he tucks that, he's still going in the end zone.
Yep.
You just got to tuck it. This just gets it in quicker.
Now, incredible play, by the way. Incredible
Well,
play by Snead.
and so we technically have two lead pastors. They just have different roles, but they both preach. One preaches more. One does a little bit more of what a associate pastor would do, but they're both the same level.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, right after he pushed Snead's shoulder down, stood over him, spun the ball, and flexed. And they called a penalty. I was like, "Hey Brian, what's that verse? Pride comes before a fall." And then like 2 plays later, he fumbles. I was like, "Dude, you." And Burrow even saying, let him taunt or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
the reason you don't let him taunt is because then there's fights, and that looks terrible.
Right.
It's because for the NFL, it's not just like, oh, the kids will taunt. All the kids taunt. They watch the NBA. The NBA is always doing on their head, or you're too short. They're doing
Yeah.
all they do the mellow thing. They do all of the celebrations. They do the Curry and the KD. They watch everything they do. They only
Right.
have to slip up once for the kids to then copy that for the rest of their lives. So it's not really for that. Let's be honest. Even the concussion thing is for legal reasons. Um, but it's so that they don't have to like break up big fights. Like if you've seen any of the old playoff games that they were someone was showing Mean Joe Green because
Oh
he's
yeah.
one of the this might have been on Facebook actually. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Like he was literally like punching people. Like he punched someone in the stomach. They're like crazy things that no one would want to watch. Like they'd be like, "Oh, this is barbaric. I can't watch this." If they're
Mm-hmm.
actually like within the lines destroying each other within a play, it's not the worst thing, right? Oh, they pancaked him like crazy. After the whistle, that doesn't look very good, right?
No.
Because then it's like, oh, you have no control over your emotions. So, um, yeah, I'm one that I'm a Barry Sanders. Don't talk. Just make your game show for it because it already did. He beat Snead, who's amazing. He got snubbed from the All Pro team. I think it was him. And then if he tucks that, he scores on the guy. So then he has 2 plays on that guy. Instead, like he punks the guy 15 yards. Now they have to work harder to score, and then they don't score. You look like a dummy.
Well, and you know what's interesting? Because I agree with you, and I even said this to someone on X. God, stupidest name. I'm just going to call it Twitter. I do not care. That's a stupid ass name. But I told someone the problem, especially if you're Flowers, right? You already know the game's chippy. So the refs are already going to be watching you even closer because they're trying to prevent the escalation, like to your point. So I didn't think it was that big in a normal game, right? Like they probably would be like, okay, dude, like we're going to give you a warning. Don't do that. But because of everything that preceded it, and I kind of had a problem with the penalty that they gave for the headbutt, which was a weak headbutt, when essentially you're incentivizing. Well, let me rephrase. I don't have a problem inherently with the penalty, but I would either have liked offsetting or none at all, because essentially what you've told the Chiefs is like, okay, keep trying to get these penalties on the Ravens. Like, I don't, as a ref, I don't want to incentivize you to be picking fights. I want to be like, no, we're knocking this off now because I don't want further things down the road. Unfortunately, Zay kind of suffered because of that. Like, he let his emotions get the best of him when that probably doesn't get called normally. But the refs are like, look,
It does.
it's been... Yeah, I think that was not enough.
No,
that would have normally gotten called.
They call it instantly when you are over top of someone. Instantly.
Maybe it just hasn't happened enough that I haven't noticed.
No, because people don't do it. Because, again, he's a rookie, so he's not been in the NFL long enough. That's literally an automatic foul.
Really?
Like,
Okay.
Automatic. It may be dumb. I think someone said, they stopped letting people, like, spike the ball near people. It's just something they call every time. You hit a quarterback in the helmet, even if it's like a tickle. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, because he had the hit.
It was a big.
It was. It's because he had the hit where and I've told people this, you're wearing a fishbowl on your head essentially. So even if you lead with your shoulder, as soon as you kind of do one of these to the quarterback, you're going to hit heads. Like just
Oh, right.
because.
On the actual hit. Yeah.
I mean, I get
See
it.
that one I think might have been a little softer, but at the end of the day, like there was another hit I think Mahomes took, and I'm like, oh, we were talking about it where the guy buried him. I was like, they don't let people plant anymore, and that dude
Yeah,
and Mahomes was on his butt, and they still let him fin. Like he wasn't even part of it.
there was
So
even
that I
one.
mean, kind of offsetting at that
There,
point.
there was even one on Purdy where the guy literally dove with his head, and Purdy
Yeah.
got up and was bleeding, and I was like, you know what? I in a weird
Oh,
way,
yeah, it was a Lions game. Yeah.
I'm
Not
kind of
Mahomes.
glad it didn't get called, and that's kind of what I was meaning with the offsetting with Kelsey. Is like I don't want to encourage a guy on one team to kind of keep poking because I'm like, you're just making my life harder. You're gonna make this worse. But again, if you're playing football, you know if you're the guy who came in late, you're getting a flag. You
Yeah.
can't be the guy who comes in late. So it's just another mental error.
Well, and Van Noy played for the Patriots, so he
Yeah, he knows
knows
better.
those things. He
He
knows
knows
better.
better.
He's a veteran. Honestly, the Ravens silly good defense. When you look at, they have Clowney, who is a what 1 or 2 overall pick.
Yep.
Van Noy was a high level draft pick that was a well sought after free agent that played for Bill Belichick, so he's super smart. They got Kyle Hamilton, Smith, the other linebacker I don't remember, Humphrey, and their other corner McQueen, right, and then Humphrey and whoever they're like they are stacked. So the fact that they let them just run down the field,
Is it Queen or is it McQueen?
McQueen,
Really?
McQueen.
Oh man, I have
No,
his name wrong.
Queen.
Oh, it's Patrick Queen. Okay, dude.
Patrick
I was
Queen.
thinking,
Yeah,
good
yeah.
lord, if I just not been paying. By the way, real quick, sorry, I had this up.
Go ahead.
Forgot to mention it. The only injury he's had recently, Lamar, it was a left knee injury with no details, but that was back in November, and he didn't miss any time. But he did have missed 6 games with a pretty bad PCL strain last year. So you do wonder, like, it was the Cam Newton problem. Cam started to have some injuries to his knees, and it just really caused him to struggle because, that's a lot of what Cam could do. I'm not as worried about Lamar. And I don't even know if it was injury. It just felt like, not, because I don't know, I'm not in his head. It felt like trying to prove a point where, hey, I can beat you with my arm, when it's just, dude, just win. Who cares how you do it?
Yeah.
Just win. But I don't know. Maybe, I noticed Bosa in the game with the Lions. He looked like not as fast, and during halftime he had a heating pad on his back.
Yeah.
So
he
who
was
knows?
having
Maybe
back
he's a
spasms
little,
or something.
huh?
He was having back spasms or something.
Right, and I could tell when he was
I
running.
don't know
It was
exactly.
it wasn't like fluid, normal. Okay, it was very labored. So who knows? Maybe Lamar had something we don't. I mean, he has to technically report it. You know what I mean? Like if he just says I'm good.
I mean, he was off 2 weeks, and I don't know that they were rolling in that Texans game. I don't think he got hit at all, really.
Yeah, I didn't think
So-
so, but it.
I think it was a schematic thing. They gave up on running the ball, and then they were. I don't know that they were telling Lamar this, but they're basically like, just pass the ball,
Yeah,
like throw on them. And a lot of people would say, well, the Chiefs got ran over by the Bills, and I would say which is Nick Wright's point, but I agree with him that they were like, we have really good corners. We're not going to let you beat us deep.
yeah.
Because the Bills do have huge big plays, which they almost did with, but they didn't connect, so they didn't, right, at the end of the day.
That's the gamble you
And so-
were willing to take.
So I think they had said Josh Allen only had 4 games where he didn't have a play over 20 yards, and he didn't have one that game. And it's like, so they were saying, yes, you can run the ball. And it's kind of a defensive philosophy right now anyway, because the way schemes work offensively, where you can get nickel and dime people down the field almost anyway. So you're like, we're gonna make you just do a lot of plays, because the more plays you run, the more chance for a fumble, a sack,
Right.
Interception, incompletion. Like, you're just gonna have to work your way down instead of like, all right, 40-yard post, we're good. We big chunk play, 25-yarder, we're in the end zone. Teams don't want to give that up, so they don't. And
But
it
Bills
seemed
also
like,
seemed were like they were okay with that. Because like, listen, that just means you get less possessions. But then they never stopped the Chiefs except for one punt and one fumble. So that's the
yeah,
danger of that philosophy. Is like, cool, you got 150 yards rushing, but you're not getting in the end zone. You're not scoring like we are,
yeah.
and then you
Well,
you,
because
you have to rely on a field goal.
then it becomes, oh, I'm much better red zone defense. Okay, cool. Find yourself there. You get 3 points. We're gonna go
Mm-hmm.
get 7. It's almost like the basketball nowadays of the 3 and the 2. It's like,
Yep.
okay, you just made. So if I go 40% from 3, 10 shots, I get 12 points. If I go 50 to 60%, if I have to go 60% from 2 to also then get 12 points.
Mm-hmm.
When it's still really hard to score 2 points in the NBA. So it's kind of that, and a 7 to 3 is even bigger, right? I don't even get 7 points from 2 field goals. I
Right.
get 6.
Right.
I have to hope they miss a extra point.
Well, and
So
the best
I
kickers in the world, it's kind of like free throws, right? Like their best kickers in the world are 80 to 90%. So it's not even guaranteed you're getting 3 points. You know,
right, right,
so my if we're like looking ahead for the Ravens, to me that I mean they're feeling the same thing that the Lions and the Packers are. Ironically, is very much that we had everything right there for us. So what if you're the Ravens and Lamar? I'm going in the off season thinking, okay, we're right there, but man, we didn't do ourselves any favors because everybody's reacting to Lamar and saying, well, he played terrible. What's like, well, to your point, Josh Allen played better when he had a running game. Jordan Love played better when he had a running game. Even Mahomes played better when he had a running game.
right. You
You
get a little bit more
just left,
protection.
yeah,
Yeah,
you just left Lamar out there. Oh, and we forgot about the strip sack. They were getting pressure on him consistently because they went, well, you just have just essentially told us you don't plan on ever running the ball again. So we're
right.
coming for your QB. And
And that was without a minute. Once a
mhm.
Minihue did that, he
Which,
was out after
man,
that, which is unfortunate.
prayers out to Menahu. I listen. I obviously want the Niners to beat the Chiefs, but I am so torn for him having that injury. That just I never wish those on anybody. I don't care
Was
what
it
team
an
he played
ACL or
for.
something?
He tore his ACL. I'm
Yikes.
and he's a good dude. I really like him
Yeah.
as a player. He's very talented, and that sucks. But I just don't. I don't know. Again, I'm not an offensive coordinator. I really can't wait to watch film from guys I trust. I just don't get the game plan, Rob. Like you were never really out of the game. Why did you? I mean, the Niners. I think you said it. At the end of the game, were even on running and passing, and they were down
I
17.
didn't.
It
I don't
wasn't
think
like
I
it
said that.
was either you or Dad or someone. It was crazy to me. They ended the game with like 31 passes, 33 rushes, which obviously includes Purdy's scrambles, but still,
Right.
you were down 17 and you still had a balanced attack. I don't get what the Ravens were doing. I really don't.
Well, I mean, I think they were afraid that they were going to go down again and score 21 nothing at that
Mm.
point. I think I don't know how good their offensive coordinator is. Obviously, he's been well.
Better than
He's been
Greg Roman.
touted. Right. He's been. I mean, Greg Roman was pretty awesome. We got to. Lamar was killing it. He was trying to take advantage of Lamar's abilities more than just like, hey, we're going to grow you into this next thing. So
Sure.
to say Greg Roman couldn't do that, he was just, I feel like, trying to capitalize on his ability to run. But at the end of the day, you do have to throw it from the pocket at some point. But yeah, the that coordinator just got tight, thinking we're gonna have to score this many points and we're gonna have to do it fast. When it was what 4 minutes left of the first quarter or something when
Yeah.
they were down 14. Like
I think they got shell shocked.
as much as I've watched the Chiefs, because I watched them a lot, we got NFL Plus or whatever it is. So they were on a lot because we're
Yeah.
East Coast over here in North Carolina. They're a top team, so they get a lot of national games. They looked really good, the Chiefs did, but they've only scored 30. And if you count some of the games where they kneeled or Mahomes like slid to run out the clock because he didn't need to, I don't know how many times it was, but maybe it was like 5 times. I think you got to trust your defense and know we could go get 28. We think we can get 28. The Chiefs have given up 28 before, not 30, but we just have to button down, and they
I
only
mean, they only
get
scored
a
17.
max of right. So they just abandoned it too quick, and they didn't trust what they can do because they did run the ball decently. I do think the Chiefs were selling out more than unfortunately the Niners were to stop the run
Yeah.
because they were like, we have to stop that because otherwise Lamar's he's gonna get what he wants because this is gonna work real well, and then we're gonna be all out of place, and he's gonna hit OBJ and Flowers and Bateman. He's gonna hit all those guys. And now they're going to have those 20, 30-yard plays. Our guys are going to be tired, and then they're going to get easy scores.
Right.
So,
Well, I think, because I mean, I get it. In a weird way, I was complaining to Dad. All I was hearing about was the Lions falling apart, but we just literally did the same thing with the Ravens. So I do think we need to talk about Kansas City because, quote unquote, this was the worst Kansas City team, and they're in the Super Bowl again. So, I mean, if you're Kansas City, if you're on Kansas City's team right now, how are you feeling looking at the Niners? I don't think you're scared of them, but I'm just like, how do you think they're feeling going to the Super Bowl?
well, one, I think they've enjoyed being doubted. They were doubted last year, too, if you remember.
I don't.
La-
Sorry.
so, so a lot of people were saying that, we'll see what they do without Tyreek, all this, that, and the other thing. They certainly believed more in them because their offense was doing crazy things.
Mm-hmm.
But people doubted them so much this year, and when I watched, I was like, their defense is nasty.
Yeah.
That you can't really throw on them. You might get one or two big plays, but they're not usually back to back. You might get a couple big runs, but they barely give up. Was it 17 or 18 a game?
Yeah.
And so it was like, they don't score enough. They scored 22, 24 a game. It's like, yeah, well, they give up 20 or they give up 17. So guess what that is? That's a lot of wins.
Well, and it's such a great pivot by them. They literally did the opposite of Brady's early career. They said, well, we have the high-flying offense. We can't afford that. Defense, honestly, is cheaper. They found two incredible corners in the draft. It's a really, really smart pivot. The thing that was holding them back was the receivers. Now, they are benefiting, and I will keep saying this. This is the weakest the NFL as a whole has been in a long time. If this was the year to have kind of your off year, this was the one to pick because there's just not another juggernaut.
But that's the thing. Now maybe you didn't believe this, but everyone was saying the Niners, the Bills, right as they came on strong, and the Ravens were this like, gosh, don't let the Bills in. Who's going to beat the Ravens? Certainly, if they get to the Super Bowl, I didn't think the Niners or Detroit was going to beat them. So there was this like, oh, these guys are like, this is the year.
Remember, I'm a wrestling fan. It didn't happen. I'm a wrestling fan. I can tell a really good booker when I hear one. The media, listen, when I was listening to, and I don't mean anything against any of the shows I mentioned, I just know they're trying to tell a story. In the first 4 weeks of the season, it was, gosh, look at Miami over Denver. Gosh, look at Cowboys over the Giants. Gosh, look at the Niners over the Cowboys. So I get it there, but if you actually, and this is something I've learned in spades this year. If you actually watched film, no one should have been surprised with the Green Bay beating the Cowboys. I'd forgotten actually that they're basically Niners East, matched up perfectly. Then we played the Lions, matched up perfectly. Great on the edge, great rushing team. Defense can get to the quarterback. If you actually watch film, it's like, no, there's not really one team that has no holes, right?
Right.
The only one that was consistent but kind of flew under the radar was the Ravens a little bit. The Kansas City's problem was the receivers couldn't catch. Until they fixed that problem, yeah, that's why people were doubting him, because if you're going to keep giving the ball to the other team off your receivers, that's a hard formula to keep winning off of. And honestly, defense isn't sexy to people. People aren't going to give you a ton of flowers outside of the Ravens because they had the flashy defense. I don't even mean that as an insult. It's just they were kind of old school Ravens.
when they had the young studs and whatnot. Well, so when I say people were saying don't let like the Bills in, that's Rich Eisen, who is very calm on his takes, right?
Oh, I didn't even know he
He's
said
very,
that. That's interesting.
yeah, he was because they'd won
And I
six
like Rich
straight,
Eisen, so that
right?
actually
I
surprised
do.
me.
I mean, they do the overreaction Monday, which I love watching, which I haven't finished. I'll be excited to finish it. Is they Chris Brockman comes out with all these huge overreactions, and in my mind, because I can swing a little bit more than he does, as calm as I tend to be. Like he's like, no, that is such an overreaction that like the Lions will miss the playoffs next year because of what happened. But yeah, he was the one saying it. So the thing is, people, it's like if Golden State decided to um, somehow they get Embiid and they run their entire offense through Embiid and they're not doing this free flowing thing and they go in or and they don't look great for a while. They hit the playoffs and then they just take off, right? They're still a 45 or like 50 win team, a 3-4 seed, something like that, similar to the Chiefs. We'd be like, I mean, maybe it's different in the NBA because you're like, look at those guys. If they figure it out, they're going to win. But because they would have switched their style completely, I think people would doubt the Golden State Warriors in that sense. And then they go and win, and you're like, well, I mean, they had Curry and Embiid. It's like, no, you guys doubted them this whole year. And I've watched, like I said, I've watched the Chiefs. A lot of it is, to me, I don't think it was just the receivers. It was just the timing of the drops because Mahomes isn't like, I mean, he did this last game where he could hit 10, 12 receivers in a row. He is when it matters is when it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that means third down, that means fourth down. There was a couple man, one of the games they lost. It might have been was it the Bills game? I mean the Bills game, the guy was offsides. And then there was another game where it was like third and whatever, and someone dropped it. And then it was fourth and whatever, and the 83 or 84, their wide receiver Watson hit him in the
Oh
face,
yeah,
and he dropped it. Like, I mean, so it wasn't just that they were dropping it; it was like win,
yeah.
which to me is very similar to the Lions, which we'll get to. But I think the Chiefs are in a really good spot because again, if that penalty again, ifs were whatever that whole saying, if they get the Buffalo win earlier in the year, and then I think there's an if they don't do the two funky things against Oakland, the
Oh
fumble on
yeah.
the handoff for a touchdown and the pick six. Like that's all Oakland scored basically was
They
the
didn't get a
was
first down for 3 quarters, Rob.
right. So
Like,
that
how do you
was
lose to that team?
that was a super weird thing, but that's two more wins. They're 13-4. We're like, oh, they're really really good, right? So I think it'll be interesting because I think Baltimore can be better next year, right? They'll have all of their hurt running backs back, assuming contracts, whatever. I don't know how many of their guys on defense will be not on contract.
I mean,
Interesting to
that's going to be
think,
a good
but
off-season topic. Is what do they
I,
look like next year?
I would assume Lamar will look better another year under the system. I assume that as long as they don't lose any coordinators or whatever, they'll be fine. They'll get a couple more draft picks, just like they did this last year, and they'll roll. But I also think the Chiefs, Rashee Rice is going to be a lot better. They'll probably get rid of Tony and maybe even Hardman. Go get another receiver that's either in the draft or just really good on the street, and they'll be awesome. They maybe get another tight end or something.
I
Because
mean, that's the thing is how much tread does Kelsey have left on the tires? Because
yeah,
he right now is doing and I don't mean anything against him. It's just if you actually there was a really cool thing. It showed his routes, and they're not routes. They're flat out not routes, and which is really hard to cover for the record. Like they just have that mind meld. Like he just passed Jerry Rice for receptions or something in the playoffs, which is insane. He's amazing. And again, I don't want to take anything away from Mahomes, but like right now, Kelsey is the factor. Not saying Rashee Rice, but when he needs a completion, it is Kelsey. So I'm just interested to see how many more years does he have left in who follows him, because you can't recreate that. And really, that's the league's only hope, is they have some kind of drop off as Mahomes acclimates to his receivers. That's what you're hoping for. Let's just face it.
Yeah.
That is your and the rest of the league needs to get better. Right now, we're having that cycle where all the old quarterbacks are going out. So Mahomes is now one of the oldest quarterbacks in his whole conference, because all the old guys this is kind of our little lull. How do they react as Houston gets better? As all of these other guys come in. As hopefully Joe Burrow stays healthy. I assume Lamar, now having a championship game under his belt, will react differently, and so will his coordinator. So it'll be interesting. Yeah. Does the league rise to meet them, or do you hope they come down to your level?
Well, I would assume they'll come down a little bit, but I will push back a little bit that Kelsey's the guy that he. Not that Kelsey's the guy he goes to. He certainly is. But the second half of the year, he'll see whatever's going on, and he will look Rice often. Maybe it's like 70 or 60%, 70% Kelsey, but then that 30 or 40 is Rice.
Oh, true. Agreed.
Yeah. When it matters. So to be fair, I think Rice might end up becoming that guy.
I
for
would
them.
assume.
But man, if they get a couple more guys like him, where I don't know if he'll ever be a DeAndre Hopkins or Justin Jefferson, any of those guys.
To your point,
but if he's like just a top level guy, and then you get another guy similar to him, what are you gonna do?
Travis Kelce, who I was just saying is kind of the main guy, 23 receptions. Rashee Rice has 20. So, to your point, I mean, and what's interesting too, and real quick, Kansas City's defense in 2023 was only allowing 16.8 points, only 0.6 behind Baltimore, and they were allowing a whole point fewer in the last 3 games. So they were rolling. What's interesting, and we're 40 minutes in, so obviously we got to go to the Niners game. But what was interesting is and I'm not saying Mahomes doesn't pass to a bunch of different people. I'm not saying that. But obviously right now he has his favorite targets, because obviously the other guys haven't proven to be trustworthy. In fact, it's funny. Tony, people say, was on Instagram Live basically saying Kansas City was lying about his injury. It's like, well, bro, there might be a reason for that.
His hands are injured. His hands are hurt.
Yeah. Now,
had brick surgery.
So, you said you missed the whole first half of San Francisco Detroit.
Well, yeah, most of it.
And I can't spell. Honestly, and I'll stand by it. I was not, was not having a good day, and was what bugged me more than anything was just the fact that it's not news. Niners struggle against edge rushing. Struggle against rushing in general, and week after week, we just repeat the same mistakes. And it's very frustrating, because it was like Wilkes for the whole first half was saying, well, at some point they're going to stop running. Because they were getting 5 yards before contact. And
I thought you were going to, yeah, without contact for sure.
And again, I get it. I'm not a defensive coordinator. And also one thing I've learned all year is there is more than just, the defensive coordinator sucks. But what I will, keep saying over and over again is, if this is a problem, that they're going to do this, and yet you consistently try, kind of like Dan Quinn for me, you're going to struggle against these things, and yet you keep struggling with them over and over again. And it's not like the Niners historically are bad against the run. I get it. If year after year we're terrible against the run, then it'll be like, well, that's clearly not Wilkes. That's a personnel problem.
Well, you also got to think who's in our division. Arizona is not really a running team, but I think they actually ran the ball decently against us.
Yes, James Conner had a day.
Right, and he's pretty good, but, I mean, as a team,
right,
they shouldn't have done that. And I know Seattle has gotten better at running the ball, but since Marshawn Lynch, they've really struggled running the ball.
Very true.
Consistently with a guy. So
And partially because of injuries.
And since what's his name with the Rams,
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
who was
yeah.
the MVP for
Gurley?
that year, Gurley, right? It was like since him, they all want to. All NFL teams want to run the ball a good bit, but they're not like, oh, those are top 10 running teams. And they're not.
Right.
So for us to be good against the run makes a little bit of sense because we get 5 games, 6 games against, some garbage. But at the same time, when I watch them play, I'm like, unless Warner's screaming through there, we didn't make a play.
No. Well, and what's frustrating to me to stop the run, and this isn't news. You don't need to be a defensive coordinator to know this. It's effort. It's positioning. I mean, those are the two big things because your nose tackle, the way Vince Wilfork was such a stud, just 8 double teams. And you have to effort. You have to out effort the guy in front of you, but also have good gap integrity. That being said, if you look at Green Bay and then you look at how the Niners attempted to stop the run, we didn't do ourselves any favors. It was always in 4-3. The cornerbacks and linebackers were 5-6 yards off the ball. Unless you just have studs, which we're supposed to, Chase Young, Hargrave, Armstead, Bosa, which again, I get we kind of engineered it to your point to rush the passer. I understand that.
Yeah, Armstead and Hargrave, I feel like, are much more pass rushing defensive tackles.
Which Armstead historically has been actually better against the run than actually in terms of pass rush. But I still agree with you. It is engineered, but there was no, hey, let's try a 5-man front. I mean, in the second half, one of the reasons why we held him to 34 rushing yards was because if you watch, everybody was about 2 yards off the line of scrimmage. It was much closer. Now, you don't necessarily want to keep doing that because that's when you get just completely burned on a play-action pass. But it is the going into the game and attempting the same things that have not worked all year. And maybe that part of that, right? Like, you can't just completely switch it up in the championship game. But if you look at the playoffs, the teams that played static defenses got eaten alive in the playoffs. And I think that's the next wave. If you're going to try to play static defense, unless you just have the 85 Bears in terms of just like that good of a defense, you are not going to do well. And don't just disguise for the sake of disguising. That's a waste of time. But you can't. That is dinosaur defense. You are going to struggle. And with Wilkes, I know I'm harping on him. I know the Niners have been really good. But to me, watching film, he does not fit our personnel. He's a DB guy. I'm really appreciative that our DBs have gotten better. But he doesn't do much for the front four. He's not really, again, great against the run. And it's like every game. It's like your second half adjustments, great, awesome, I appreciate it. But at some point, that hole is going to be too big to dig yourself out of, especially against a team like Kansas City. So when I hear people say Purdy's the weakness, it's like, well, no, our kicker and our defense. It's not Purdy. Purdy's now my third biggest worry at this point. Yeah, he can throw it to the other team, but he's proven 2 games in a row he can score and do what he needs to do. But man, you can't go down 17 on Kansas City and think you're going to have a prayer. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And I say this knowing our linebackers are awesome, knowing Warner's, if not the best, top 5 or whatever linebacker. And what's 57's name?
Greenlaw.
Greenlaw. I was stuck on Kilgore or whatever his name. Couldn't get it out of my head. Anyway, like, I know they're awesome, even against the pass too, to a point, right? Most linebackers just aren't good against the pass in general, but when you watch them, you're like, they did okay. Like, when I watch, I am confused as to why sometimes people say that, and it's because our defensive front is getting eaten up, and so then they're having to deal with an offensive lineman on them instead of what a linebacker's job is to fill the gap, right?
Real quick, though, there are a couple times where Warner, and this is the only reason I'm wondering about coaching, because at some point, if your guys are consistently out of position, I start to wonder about coaching. But again, I get it. They're adults. They need to know what they're supposed to do. But it's like, okay, what are you teaching them? Is he, the hole's here, and he's jumping to a gap that's not even his responsibility. It's really weird.
Well,
Because I agree with you. He shouldn't be
maybe
taking on linemen, but it's like,
but
okay, it was,
maybe it was though, and the lineman didn't do it. I don't know. I mean, people do make mistakes and
sure.
whatnot. So
And he's been missing some tackles, too.
I'd have to watch it, but yeah, I don't doubt them as players. But when I watch, it makes me feel like they're not as good as they are. But that's because if the defense or the offense knows what you're doing. I think I'd mentioned this. It was when I think it was when we played the Packers. Yeah, it must have been when we played the Packers. Greenlaw traveled with the running back, but we were in zone, and it confused them. So then it might have been Detroit, actually. It was Detroit, right? Didn't they show
I
it
think
maybe
they did.
back in the
You know
broadcast?
what? To give credit, and I saw this on Twitter, and I can't wait to watch. Johnny Dell is one of my favorites because he just does Niners, and he's just good at it. But he talked about actually we did a lot, and I don't understand why we wait for the second quarter. This is just my frustration. I'm sure there's a reason. We did a lot of disguised coverages in the second half to actually do exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, maybe it wasn't actually the second half was on purpose, and the first half was also on purpose, but not in a good way, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
But and maybe defenses already do this again. I don't watch like film or whatever. I'm watching a 2-year-old, so um, that's not really a thing I have time to do. But I wonder if they don't already do it. And I think we had mentioned this either last time or time before that we talked. If defenses are going to start doing some of the things offenses do, where a lot of offenses send people in motion.
yeah,
A lot of offenses, um, the Chiefs do it a ton. They just whether it's 83 or Kelsey, one of the tight ends or both, right now at the same time because that's illegal. They'll start him to motion behind the line and then just take him back just to see if anyone moves.
right.
Right, just to see if anyone moves. And and I wonder if defenses, because like Kyle Hamilton was awesome yesterday
Yeah,
at like disguising when he was blitzing, and he is an animal. He's tall, he's fast, crazy. But if people shifted, they would be like, "Oh, he didn't shift." It would give it away. I know defenses, some are predicated off disguise, some are based on blitzing, some are based off base, and that each one it's rock paper scissors. Base is the rock, and somehow it gets covered up by paper, which doesn't make sense. But then the fancy scissors it smashes. So it all plays into the different offenses that they'll go up against. But I do wonder if defenses are going to add some different things to kind of account for that. Like, some different rules that they'll roll with that make a lot more sense of, Ed Reed did it a ton of, he's going to act like he sees it, roll back the other way, and then comes back and does an interception on Peyton or whatever. I just wonder if they're going to do that. But I doubt it when we're looking at a guy who's going to be coaching in the Super Bowl, who got fired by the Panthers. The whole time I was thinking he needs to do what Bill Belichick did to Jared Goff and McVay, and he just did a 5-man front the entire game. And maybe we don't have 5 linemen to put out there that long, but I think we could have, and unless they switch into 4 wideouts, I think you can hang with that. You know what I mean? I think you put Ward on the second best guy, and then you do some other fancy coverages behind that, and you'd be okay. Because the problem was not that Goff was killing us; it was that they were running it down our, right up the gut, and we couldn't stop them. And then immediately pull it back. You have a nice 10-yard game to St. Brown, to Laporta, to anyone, literally anyone you want. And it's tough because I not to say the Niners didn't earn it, but despite what you think about the four, in the column it says W,
right.
whether or not they earned that, because I do think the Lions were the better team. That one of the drops was a harder catch, and I think it was very catchable though. And then I think that guy dropped both of them, didn't he?
I think so,
Reynolds or
unfortunately.
whatever. I think
Yeah.
he dropped both of them. The old Kyle Williams action there, that
Well,
we
I
know so
get it.
well.
That happens in the playoffs. Like, to come back on a team, you need the team to make mistakes. Like, that's the, duh.
Right. But they, I mean, literally, like in their hands had it, or their face mask had it,
Right. Well, that's why I
and
say if
so
you're the Lions and Packers, you're looking at this year and just being like, are you freaking kidding me? Because you did have, I mean, Lions, Packers, Bills, Ravens. Like, that's why you're at home. Unfortunately, is that is the difference.
yeah,
The two most, I get, yeah, probably two most veteran teams are the ones in the Super Bowl. Like,
yeah,
that's part of the playoffs is you have that experience to not fold.
yeah. It's unfortunate because we were talking before we went live the Dan Campbell thing. I don't mind him going for any of the fourth down ones because that's his mo. But someone was making the point of we had scored a field goal. If they score a field goal on that first fourth down, it puts it back to a three-score game.
Right.
It continues to feel insurmountable, right? Because then you're just trading back and forth.
Yep.
But then somehow we got a big stop. It's weird. So two of them they threw when we got stops because they dropped it. And then they ran the ball on third at the goal line, and we stopped that, which blows my mind
It's
because
all
we could not
momentum.
stop. We couldn't stop at all. And then, it's a play call that's dumb for them because they needed to save timeouts. They couldn't save timeouts after that because they ran the ball. It's it's just it's an unfortunately very Lions-esque way to lose.
Yeah.
But anyone who truly blames Dan Campbell for what I think every player wants is to the coach to believe in them and put it in their hands. Because that's what he did. He said, Goff, go make a couple throws. And really, he did. Reynolds didn't catch them. You know, at the same point, you also want a coach like Bill Belichick that's like, I don't care how good you are. We're going to do the right thing. And so sometimes I feel like that comes at odds. Hopefully, Campbell doesn't go for as many fourths next year and figures out what that level is. He could
Yeah.
still lead the league in fourth down attempts and have that, like, we're going for it. We're going to be aggressive. But also, like, there's still some analytics that, instead of just going for it all the time, it would be like, hey, no, like, kick the field goal right now. You're up 17 because someone made the point. You have a quarter. The Niners would have a quarter and a half left, and they have to have 3 scoring possessions if they stop you every time.
Right.
So 6 total possessions. That could take up the 12. Is it 15-minute quarters? Right. So that could take up the 20 minutes. So I don't know. The whole thing is difficult. I'm glad I'm not a coach. I had the sweaty pits and hands, and it was rough.
Well, and that's just because I agree with you. I don't really have a problem with necessarily any of his decision making because you're consistent with kind of how you've been playing. And again, it'd be a little different, right? Excuse me. If you were watching and you're like, man, like these are terrible play calls, but every time the play was there to be had. It wasn't like they just completely screwed up the play call. The execution wasn't there, which is youth. I mean, Purdy in the second half was spectacular, and nothing against Goff. There were some pretty tough throws he was going to have to make because the layups were the ones people were dropping. Ironically, a
Right.
little bit of luck. I still think the play on Ayuk was pass interference. Regardless, it doesn't really matter. It ended up being what it is, and that is part of getting to a Super Bowl that people forget. There's luck in a lot of games. In the game where Joe Montana had the drive, he literally threw it to the defense and the guy dropped it. So that it in a lot of these scenarios, you are gonna need luck. That's just you need the luck that Zay Flowers held out the ball and Snead was able to knock it away. Luck that he
Yeah.
did taunting. There's part of getting to the Super Bowl is also because it's just good team versus good team normally. So you're going to need one or the other to kind of make enough mistakes that you can capitalize on to get to the end of the game. Thankfully for us, Dan Campbell's aggressiveness worked against him. We still had to stop him. On both fourth downs, even though they were catchable balls, there was some really good pressure on Goff to actually make the throw a little bit harder, to make a little bit not as much of a layup. So, I mean, it is what it is. Either you are the team who makes the good plays or holds them off in terms of Kansas City, or you're the team that kicks that door open and just keeps coming, because they did have to keep executing. If you look, the Niners in the past, I think 10 possessions in the second half have scored on 8 of them. So, they had to execute. They had to make the field goals. They had to make their plays. So, I mean, that's kind of what playoff football just kind of boils down to, is who executes, like we said, for the full 60 minutes. And sometimes you executed well enough for a half and got hot enough. The thing analytics doesn't factor in, momentum. Momentum was all on the side of the Niners. You could see it in the Lions with the drops, with the third and goal where we just blew through their really good offensive line and just crushed their running back. That's effort.
Was that 33 that time? Was that the
I don't know.
the newish guy? I think that was him. So I was watching something.
Oh, God.
I was watching. He was on Cowherd's show. If that's the guy. So I know 33 is the guy I'm talking about. I don't know if he's the one that started that play. But he played for the Patriots for a bit.
Logan Ryan. I saw the interview. That was cool.
So seems like he was about to get on a Disney cruise if no one's watched it to this point. That'd be weird if you're watching this before Cowherd. But he was about to get on a Disney cruise because he'd played, obviously, football forever. And you always play football around Thanksgiving time. So, but yeah, the throw to Jennings, that little floater basically, and the Ayuk catch felt very New York Giants helmet catch type feel, where it's these, obviously not as the Ayuk catch was crazy, but the fact that Jennings had to one-hand it. It was a soft throw, which is already hard to catch because you don't get it's the oomph in the throw that actually helps it stick and allows your hand to flex on the ball easier.
Right.
Instead of if it's soft, you might squeeze too soon instead of letting the ball come to you. Anyway, both of those felt very, David Tyree feeling, and that is unfortunately how football seems to go. I had another point, man. Unfortunately, my brain just kind of shut off there. But
you're dealing with a little bit of a cold, so it makes the brain fog a little thick.
My left nostrils just deciding to keep running. But yeah, I mean, playoff football is such a funny thing that way. If a ball can bounce one way or the other, and you had mentioned it earlier, you forget. I feel like I remember a lot of the details of things because I think those things matter as much as the winner or the loss, because otherwise we're saying Jimmy G had a 70% winning percentage with the Niners and he's a top whatever quarterback ever. And it's it is you got to win in the playoffs. That is what it is. Mm-hmm. But there's still some for Rodgers, just to bring up kind of a random example against who were they playing? I don't unfortunately I don't remember who it was. Yeah, was it the Cardinals at the time? I don't remember, but he put up 40 something points.
Mm-hmm.
It was 40 something points, right?
That was the year Kurt Warner lost to the Steelers.
Right. And so Rodgers only went to one Super Bowl. It's his defense couldn't literally stop anything. Or what was the Romo with the Dez catch? Mm-hmm. That was clearly a catch. Anyone that has a brain knows that's a catch. He's literally turning and diving at the same time. Are you kidding? Are you not an athlete to understand that?
He didn't make a football move.
Yeah, you're telling me he didn't spin and dive, and that's not a football move?
You know what phrase I would love to be out of football for the rest of the time? A play common or an action common to the game. Hate it.
Yeah,
hate it. Hate it so much. It's the dumbest thing.
if Barry Sanders was in the NFL, it would not be coming to the game
Yeah.
because no one does what that guy did.
You know what's
So,
funny too, by the way, is
um,
I watched. I think it was the either the catch. It was one of the Niners' classic drives, and I think it was against the Cowboys because I think that was the catch. Is that's why I'm not sure. I don't remember if it's Bengals. It doesn't really matter. Guy caught the ball, immediately gets it knocked out, fumble. What's that now? It is a incomplete pass. So it was funny watching old football where things that are obvious at the time, we've now made it 1,000 times harder, essentially to cover up mistakes by the referees. It's why the tuck rule exists. It's why the catch rule got changed. We're actually, rather than just admitting like, okay, the refs messed up, they're like, well, actually, it's like a guy being caught in a lie, and his lies keep getting more complicated.
well, and the interesting thing is, and I'm sure you've heard this, I think it was Dean Blandino. He had made the reference, or maybe it was Brady himself, that the tuck rule was already in place,
Oh, really?
but it never happened. Well, they modified it after that to make it more clear. Um, but yeah, apparently something like that was already in place, but the language wasn't as clear and awesome. I think it probably still should have been a fumble, but unfortunately, then you have to make those rules afterwards to clarify that. But if we're honest, like, do we want the Raiders in the Super Bowl? Because we don't really like them anyway. So,
You know what's funny?
despite being a California team,
I didn't know this. Did you know? It's actually in the rules, and it blew my mind. If an offensive player gets into a position that would otherwise be holding, but the defensive player makes a rip move, it's no longer holding. I was like, that doesn't. It's still hold. No, he made a rip move, so therefore the action that would have been holding, which is like the bear hug, no longer holding because the defender made a rip move. I'm like, I don't. What? That doesn't make any sense. I don't understand that at all. What?
yeah. They almost need to go back through. It's kind of like how the U.S. and a lot of places honestly have these really old laws where you can't boil a duck outside in
Mm-hmm.
November because it's
Right.
like, well, we thought people were witches at the time if they were boiling a duck, or something
Mm-hmm.
stupid. Um, or you can't
Can't
fill
walk
up
your
your
crocodile on the
gas
sidewalk.
right because someone did that at one point.
Right.
S- Obviously, you would probably still need that law so people wouldn't walk a crocodile. But in the sense of the NFL, I feel like they almost need to go back through and look to see how many of these do we need and how many of these cause too many issues.
Yeah.
You know, um, because I'm sure there's a few in there that we could look at and be like, I mean, obviously even the catch thing because it happened to Calvin Johnson. Like you telling me that dude, if his hands are on the ball, it's not a catch? Last time I checked, anything that touches his hands is a catch. And just because he like sets it down, it's such a weird thing because for the longest time it was catch the ball 2 feet, like you don't have to keep the ball all the way to the ground because the if you think about it, like I don't know if it would be mathematically, but scientifically, if both feet are down and you catch the ball, the instant you catch the ball, that's a touchdown.
Yeah.
It's kind of like in a video game. Um, like it just computes it as a touchdown. You could get hit, blitz. You can then just start jumping on the guy and jumping on the
I
guy.
love that
It
game.
doesn't end the play.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
or it doesn't make the play different. It is the play's over. And so I wish some of those things changed a little bit. Where on the opposite, I wish for passing it would be different. To where like if you catch it and like you catch it and it gets knocked, it's a fumble.
Yeah.
Because the unfortunate thing is, as much as I think Mahomes might end up being the best ever, or at least close to, as Dad would probably argue if he's watching, here's for Dad,
Mm.
is Montana and even though he doesn't like Elway, Marino, Aikman, yada
Yeah.
yada yada, all these guys got blasted by these defensive players, and their wideouts were getting held. Now they did have stickum, so if it hit their hands, it was staying because those gloves are good, but it's not sticking. But the point of like offense was harder back then. One, because there wasn't as much creativity within that, taking advantage of certain rules like even the NBA does now. But at the same time, I kind of would like to watch those guys play against that stuff.
Oh, it'd be unfair.
Because, well, it would be. I think there are certain guys, the Allens. I mean, Mahomes would still be one of the best, if not the best, because he
Oh, I
still
mean,
played
like if
through
Marino
injury.
played now, it'd be like
Oh,
8,000
dude,
yards.
it would be. I mean, that's the crazy thing is we think Mahomes can put a team on his back. We think Brady could. That dude, he has like all the. I think they were talking to Pat Mahomes, and I don't remember who they was, but they were telling Mahomes like, "Hey, you beat this other record." It was Dan Marino, and he was like, "That guy has so many records still." He wasn't amazed by his own thing. He was
Yeah.
like, the fact that Marino retired in I don't know 90 or something. I don't remember maybe it was 2000 or something. He still has records 25 years later in a pass happy league.
Mm-hmm.
Literally guys throwing for 5,000 yards and he had the touchdown record until like, 2000 whatever from Peyton and only a few guys have still beaten it.
Yep.
His
Yes.
48 or whatever it is still silly and some guys now are 17 games and they're still not getting close. It's just
You know my favorite record that's
we
never
tend to
going to get
forget.
broken? Number of total interceptions in a career. Favre is ahead by a wide margin.
Isn't he like 250 or something like that?
I think it's.
It
I
might be
looked this
300.
up. It's like
Because he
330.
got, yeah, I was gonna say he's probably got like 500 touchdowns.
Because he 336. Some dude named Haddle is second with 268. Testaverde has 267. And there's some
You don't get to play that long
no
if
no
you're throwing that many picks.
exactly, like you remember Peyton Manning's first year. He still has the rookie record because no team is going to let their rookie throw that many interceptions. It's just not. You're
I,
just not.
yeah. Well, they also knew they had nothing else going on, so they
Correct.
had to let him throw.
I mean, a little bit. Josh Allen, I think people forget, like was labeled a project, and it took a few years for us to have the Josh Allen we have now. So, I do wish we did give QBs more time. Real quick, we're gonna do obviously predictions, but I wanted to throw this at you because it was weird to me how quickly after Brady's retired this conversation's come up. Nick Wright and Colin Cowherd were talking and said we're probably going to look back on Tom Brady like he's Bill Russell, that the situation, the titles, but he's
I heard
not
that.
going to be. And it could be true, and I want to say that that's not true. It was just like, dude, like his body's still warm. Like that's awfully fast for us to go from singing his praises and being like he's unstoppable to he's probably Bill Russell. I was like, wow, that was a quick little like pivot. My goodness.
I think there's a lot of one, it, like you said on occasion, he does. I don't think he's a coward, a Skip Bayless or any of those guys that really pushes certain narratives.
Sure.
He does for his Chiefs, right? He's trying to get
Which
Andy to
he's
be
a
the GOAT. He's trying to
fan.
get
Yeah.
Mahomes to be the GOAT.
Yeah, he's a
So
fan.
he does.
I get it.
There's certain narratives he's still trying to push the Purdy one, which eventually he might be wrong about. But who knows? Maybe Purdy has 2 good years and then he's sucky after this. Well,
I
whatever.
mean, listen, he could be
Um,
Kurt Warner, which I will take.
So I don't agree with the Kurt Warner take though,
I
because
just meant
he
I
went
meant
to the
rings and stuff. That's all.
right. People have associated Kurt Warner with he was good with the two teams, was terrible in New York. He's talked about, I think it was on his A Football Life or whatever
Mm-hmm.
that was on YouTube. It might still be on YouTube. If you guys haven't watched it, watch it. Um, he went to the Giants. One, that team sucked.
Yes,
First of all,
hardcore.
it wasn't St. Louis and it wasn't Arizona. So unfortunately, he wasn't able to turn them around. But Eli had gotten benched for Kurt, and I think he was playing well, and it seemed to be like wearing on Eli that he was actually playing well. And I don't want to say like he had a bad game on purpose, but I think he talked to the coaching staff of like, you need to bench me and play him because otherwise you're going to lose him forever, or like trade me because like this isn't going to work. I don't know. It's something very interesting and very mature that he did that then Eli ended up winning 2 Super Bowls, luckily,
Right.
but he did it. So with the Russell Brady thing, I think he's the probably the closest comparison you can have in any sport really to him because Russell did lose in the finals. He's also been to the most finals. He's won the most finals. Um, Maybe Brady for some of those was the best player on the team, but statistically, other than the almost perfect season, he wasn't the best quarterback. Like he doesn't have as
Yeah.
many first team all pros or Pro Bowls as some other guys, even like within like it was usually Manning. And then for a little time it was Rodgers. Like he was never seen as actually the best player. That was West or um, Chamberlain for the Russell thing. And at the end of the day, Russell only cared about winning. He was
Hmm.
fine if Wilt got his numbers, but and Wilt kind of wanted to get his numbers. Wasn't always as concerned about
I think
winning.
you're mixing Lakers and Celtics. Bill Russell's a Celtic. Chamberlain, West were Lakers.
I know he played West in the finals nine
Oh, I thought you were
years or
meaning like their
something like that.
teammates. I was like, I'm
No, no,
confused.
no,
Okay, I'm
no.
tracking.
And then Chamberlain was with Philly, so they
Gotcha.
would beat them to get to the finals. So
Ah, okay. I'm tracking.
um,
I was very
so he
confused for
pretty
a
much
second.
played those two guys every year. And
Hmm.
West, all he wanted to do was win, but he didn't have Bill Russell. So
True.
um, so it kind of and Auerbach is kind of a Belichick type,
Yeah.
not person, but as far as winning.
Yeah.
But he also only won with Bill. He didn't win without Bill. So
I mean, that's
there's
another good Bill. Yeah.
another thing with him there. But I would say one Brady. It's weird because he's contemporary compared to like old, where when they only had like 4, 8, 12 teams
Hmm.
in the NBA. Whereas like now they do have a lot of teams. I would say that AFC East had been terrible a lot of the time, which again, division wise, but it would be a kind of associated with limited teams NBA. You know, you're always going to be in the playoffs because those teams suck.
Right.
Um, so I think there's something that could end up being that. It's hard to say because he does have really good numbers that compare to a lot of his guys now, the guys of his time period. He changed teams and still won. Now that team was awesome because it had, I mean, they were good with Winston. He had 30 touchdowns. You just happen to have 30 picks, right? So you get a guy that makes better decisions. You all of a sudden have 35 touchdowns and 10 picks or whatever Brady
And to
ended up
even give
having. So
Brady a little bit of credit too, he kind of even changed how he played offense because he wasn't. Listen, I get it with Randy. He was throwing deep, but Randy's a cheat code. That's just throw it up like you're in practice and
yeah,
he's going to catch it. But he adjusted and was much more of a deep ball thrower in Tampa at the end of his career when that's
right.
not his thing. He was a short to intermediate surgical passer. And
Yeah.
I don't think that gets talked enough either. Is the dude was just like, I'll just do whatever. I don't care.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think that will kind of mar how far away he is, like unreachable, because Pat Mahomes is not far away from him. I know
True.
it seems like it. If he wins on the following Sunday,
Which I wouldn't be
he's he,
surprised.
he's got 3 Super Bowls and 4 appearances,
Hmm.
and almost like he's second in wins. Like he's got again. I hate it when people, even with Lamar or Allen or all these young guys, are like, "Oh, they got time." I'm like, "No, they don't, because you don't one know when you're going to get hurt, if you get hurt, because there's a lot of chance to get hurt."
Hmm.
Purdy got hurt, and luckily he was able to come back this year. Honestly, he should be comeback player of the year.
I mean, the only one I
I
was
didn't even
fine
think
with,
about that. I didn't even think about that until now,
the only
because he
one
got knocked out of.
the only one I'd be
Good.
fine with is the dude who died on the field. Other than that,
He's
I don't understand why they don't talk about Purdy. Like I really don't.
No, so someone made the point that Hamlin, yes, he was dead and is now not dead, and that's obviously awesome. But he has like 2 tackles on the year. He's not
No,
really
I get it.
played.
Yeah.
So I think
I mean, listen, you pull a
I think
Jesus, you
he
kind of
almost
get to
deserves an award because he's not dead anymore, but that also is his reward. Whereas
maybe
Baker
rename the
was like,
reward, rename the award to his name.
honestly, that wouldn't be bad because like I think Baker deserves it because he was left for dead
True.
and
Fourth team,
happened
dude.
to like so. But to circle back to the Brady Russell thing, I think it's possible. I really do that we end up especially if Mahomes passes him, and it's like, well, Mahomes is the Jordan athletic freak doing all the things that Brady never was able to do. And Russell is similar in that with Chamberlain. Chamberlain was this athletic freak, and so is Russell. Russell was very, very athletic, but he wasn't as tall as Wilt, wasn't the scoring phenom, but he was just savvy, and that's kind of Brady's thing. He's just a savvy guy. And I don't know if you've heard the the thing that Nick had put out with gosh, I just lost it. What the heck? Getting old is such an unfortunate thing. It was dang, we were talking about
Oh,
Bill
unfortunate
and oh, it
soul.
was it was the comparison of Manning and Brady. So Brady until Manning retired was Brady was not seen as good as Manning. Manning
True.
had eventually like Brady had the team, Manning had the stats, the MVPs, and eventually some or some playoff wins against him. I think they're 2-2 or 3-2, whatever, in the playoffs. Which I don't really care about head to head that much because again,
It
it's
is a
like the
little
better
weird.
team.
Yeah.
They're not playing each other. Although I think it does matter for Mahomes because they all get scared when they play him. But they're comparing, and like Manning had all the stats. He had, by the time he retired, one less Super Bowl. He had the same amount of, I think, Super Bowl MVPs, far more MVPs, yards, and all this stuff. But then Brady ended up freaking just destroying the conversation because he kept going to the championship, either the conference or the actual Super Bowl, and ended up winning a few, all these yards and all, almost perfect season. So like Brady changed the discussion, but so in that sense, that's very Bill um, Chamberlain type deal, where it's Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain type comparison. So I think with those two, Manning and Brady was very similar to that, where Brady was the Russell, ironically in Boston, and then Manning was more of the Chamberlain type. But man, the problem is if Mahomes beats him in all the championship stuff too, no one's beating Russell with all the championships. No one's getting 11.
No.
No one's getting, and then he won one as a coach. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't
Or
know
no,
that.
was he a player? Was he a player coach? He might have lost in the finals. Then next year as a player coach. There's also a Russell thing on one of the streaming platforms that's really, really good.
By the
But
way, Manning is 3-2 versus Tom Brady in the playoffs.
right,
Which,
so one of
boy,
those
the
was with
perception. Yeah, boy, the perception is
one
he
of those
can't beat
was with
him.
Denver. And the problem was early when he did get beat by Brady, it was kind of all on Manning, even though he had been around longer. Because there was, Brewski, Ty Law, Richard Seymour. I don't know if Wilfork was there yet, but they had some great Rodney Harrison. They had some really, really studly defensive guys in an era where you could play defense.
So, Red Auerbach retired, and hilariously, Bill Russell was like the fourth choice and
Yes,
became
he was
player
pissed about
coach.
that. And they won that year, right?
I believe
And then
so.
I think he retired but stayed coach, and then they lost in the championship that next year.
Oh, wait. So, streak ended first full year when the Celtics won a record breaking 68 games. They beat the Celtics 4-1. So
Who beat him?
then,
The
sorry,
Lakers
no, the Sixers.
or Philly?
Yeah,
Okay,
Philly beat
yeah,
them.
Philly. They won. Yep.
But then they beat Philly the next year. First team in history to lose a series 3-1 before obviously some other fun happened. And then they won the finals. So he won in his second year as coach.
And then I think he retired, so yeah.
Well,
Studley.
That's fascinating. Honestly, I don't know nearly enough about basketball as I should. So the unfun part, because I already know what you're going to say, is Super Bowl prediction. Let's be honest here. Let's be honest.
I have a hard time picking the Niners. I love the Niners. I have Niners gear.
But
I don't know. I don't think the Niners got him. Now, I will say, Niners absolute. So I'm not one to say when people are like, oh, I think there's only two possibilities. I never see a game that way. Again, talking about the NBA, where it's like, oh, this terrible team. If they start making 60, 70% of their threes, that team can beat anyone,
right.
So it's not that I think the Niners can't win. They've shown they can come from behind. I think it's interesting that they've won the past two games coming from behind. I think it's interesting that in the second half of what you said, it was the last 10 drives they had, they've scored 8 times, which is not their MO. Their MO is score a ton in the first half and then just run the crap out of your team in the second half. And they might still score, but it's because they're up. And they're just picking you apart, with deep outs and posts and screens, and they're just everything's clicking. They touch the ball and it's golden. So I could see the Niners doing the hot start and like carrying it through and cruising, and then we're like, oh well, maybe the Chiefs weren't that good. I could see Mahomes coming back on us, because we decide to Steve Wilkes it. I could see us coming back on them and it being the shocking thing that, Shanahan's figured it out and all this stuff. And, not that Mahomes would make, mistakes, but Purdy makes the right plays. Maybe the wide receivers for the Chiefs drop it again. And that's like, unfortunately, that would be the thing of like Chiefs drop the ball. It would be the headline. And instead of like, Purdy beats possible GOAT. And I think the Chiefs could also blow out the Niners. I think kind of that whole quadrant of things. I think all of them can happen. I think it would be kind of cool for Purdy to do a comeback win on Mahomes. Not for the Nick Wright thing, because again, I like Nick Wright for most things, but it would be kind of a Brady Manning thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, now the Chiefs already beat the Niners last year,
right?
In the regular season.
Oh yeah, badly.
No, in the regular, they beat us bad. So that's kind of interesting, where it's like, oh, now he got him in the Super Bowl, and maybe it's the Brady thing where this awesome defense with these weapons, and he's just making the decisions, and unfortunately, it's all on Mahomes to make the plays, even though again he's got a good team. But then I think the storylines, any which way you go, is very incredible, because it's Shannon can't win the big one, he's a choker, or he turns that completely around, or Mahomes' mystique is kind of gone, or it's like it bolsters. So all that to say, unfortunately, I think the Chiefs win, and I think it's probably like sub-30s.
Yeah,
probably
it's gonna be like 20-17 kind of thing.
Again, I was thinking 24-17, where it's just a little bit out of reach, and we just don't. But I could totally see like a 30s like last year, and it just be some level of a shootout. But yeah, unfortunately, I think the Chiefs win. Maybe
yeah.
Listen, I think like a 24-17, 24-20.
Listen, I'm picking Niners, because like I don't feel like it'd be right for me to not pick the Niners. But if you gave me $1,000 and said, hey, bet on the game, I'm betting on Kansas City. Like, I'm sorry. It's like right now, Mahomes is Brady. He is the until you beat him, you don't know if you could beat him, and that's just how it is. That's until you knock the champ out, he's still the champ. Like, you got to figure out a way to beat him.
So you're picking with your heart,
Oh yeah,
is what you're saying. Yep.
100%.
I'm probably picking with my head, not my heart.
And that's
I
why it's going
just
to be
I just
interesting.
want a good game, to be honest. I'll get gray hair either way. I
I do
feel like
too.
a I feel like a closet Chiefs fan because I've watched them so much this year because they've been on, and I've been very interested in what Mahomes is doing with all that nonsense happening around him, where people are saying, "Oh, he's not good, he's this, that, whatever." It's like, okay, so he's had a down year and he's really good.
Yeah, they've gotten a little cocky and obnoxious for me, but at the same time, like, let's be honest, everybody had, like, I love Debo. He's kind of a talker. He's kind of a trash talker. He's been, and I think it's because Shanahan told him to knock it off. He's been way more like he will reply to things, but it's way more tactful than it was like we were complaining about Philly.
I well, I think if we had stomped the Lions, I think there would have been a little bit more of the Chiefs type thing. But we're not like defending champs getting disrespected. Like the Chiefs aren't a dynasty, but they're as close to a dynasty as you can be. Everyone judges dynasties just off of Super Bowls. To me, like even the Jim Kelly team was a dynasty. They did what literally no other team has done. They went to 4 straight Super
Right,
Bowls. I know they didn't win, but they went to four. I know it's not a participation trophy, but they were top two for 4 straight years.
right.
I think that to me that means something. And in the Olympics, a silver medal is a big deal. So I think, unfortunately, it sounds bad, but I think a silver medal in the NFL is also a big deal to me. So the fact that, so then again, then it would be top four if you make the conference championship game, and the fact that they've gone 6 straight years, and people somehow are still forgetting that they're a very similar team that has gone 6 straight years, right? Some
Right.
different players, but um, they have, I forget his name, but number 95 on their team now. Um, whatever his name is for the Chiefs. He's really
Lineman?
good. He's
The guy who
helped
signed the
them
big
win
contract?
this. Yes, he's helped them win the Super Bowl
Oh, good
a
gravy.
couple of
Who
times,
is
but
he?
he's really good. He's a
Chris
stud. I
Chris
can't.
Jones?
Chris Jones, yes. You're the man. Look at you. Normally, you're not the one coming up with the names, and I appreciate that. But if you're just reading my mind, is how it usually happens.
Pulled it right out of there.
But he's been like a huge guy for him the past several years. I don't think he's been with him the whole time. I feel like they drafted him. But anyway, there was like other really good linemen in the previous couple of like conference championships. It's just like you forget what a quality organization looks like, and it's just watch how they win. Yes, I get it. It's ugly. It's 21-17. It's 24, 13. But
He's
it's like,
he's been with them since 2016.
okay.
Wow.
Yeah, he's been a big reason why they've won their Super Bowls.
Yeah,
So,
because third year AP, I'm assuming APL Pro. Second team is AP2. I'm assuming that's what that means.
yes, because he's a defensive tackle,
Next
and
year Pro
Donald
Bowl.
would get
Next year
that.
AP2 Pro Bowl. AP2
I
Pro Bowl. Um, AP
I don't know
Defensive Player
if
of the Year 3. AP1 Pro Bowl. AP1 Pro Bowl. So yeah,
I don't know
doing pretty
if
damn good.
they do two defensive ends and then a nose and a defensive tackle. So like there'd only be one defensive tackle
I have no
spot,
idea.
or if they count them both as, I don't know how they connotate that, but
Ah,
yeah. Anyway, you
he's a
watch the
stud.
Chiefs; they've been awesome the past several years, and now they look somewhat normal and win slightly differently. Again, they still won 11 games. It's what we talked about with the playoff wins for quarterbacks and coaches. There was a lot of talk with the Dolphins, and to be fair, the Dolphins did not beat
Anybody
any winning team either this year, or did they beat the
won
Cowboys?
Cowboys,
They
and
beat the
that we
Cowboys,
see how well that
and
aged.
and the Cowboys didn't beat that many. But all that to say, like you have to beat the bad teams because there ends up being a lot of bad teams. There ends up being a lot of losing teams, especially the more teams that are 10, 11, 12, 13 wins, there's going to be even more teams below that
Right.
500, right? Because it has to equal 500 by the if you add all the
Right.
scores up. And it's like you have to beat the bad teams. You have to. And unfortunately, the Chiefs actually lost a couple bad teams. But like, who would you want them to lose to? The bad teams or the good teams? I would almost rather lose to the good teams because then you learn how to beat the good teams. Beating the bad teams, you could just throw darts and just have a chance, right?
Right.
They're
Right.
just
Well,
beat.
like the Raiders, they didn't have a first down for 3 quarters. You saw plenty of chances to beat them. It wasn't
It's
like they blew
still
you
right.
out.
Still plenty of that would just yeah, it would bail you out for how poorly you played. But if you play the Bills tough, you play the Eagles tough, you play the Lions tough, and you lose. I thought that was something else. That there was a dog. Oh,
Well,
he's like crying in his sleep. But
three
like if
losses
you
for
lose
the
to the good teams,
Niners.
you have a chance.
Cleveland Browns lost by a missed field goal. Minnesota, they had 460 yards of offense, lost by like 4 points. Cincinnati, Burrow had 19 straight completions, didn't lose by that much. So, those are a couple, I guess, kind of good teams because Burrow was a little weird. He was hurt. So
Well,
they were kind of
they
up
had
and
something
down.
to
But,
at the time. Cincinnati had something to prove.
right. So,
So yeah,
even in those games, the Niners were still in it the entire game. So against bad teams, they're gonna Ravens. I mean, we had 5 turnovers, but they were like, "You're not coming back in this game. Like we're shutting the door in your face because they're a better team. Like you
right.
learned way more in that game."
Yeah. No, I totally agree with the sentiment. Like you want to beat who's on your schedule, but if you end up with 11 wins by the end of the year and you've been to 5 straight conference championship games, I think you should probably get a little bit more respect. Similarly to the Niners, like we've been a good team when we've been healthy. I think we deserve a lot of respect. Um, even
Well,
I feel like I should go with 24-20 as the score to be a touchdown is a lot. I think all that to say,
right now
I don't think the
Shanahan
Niners care what I
is
say, but
right now Shanahan is Andy Reid Jr. until he proves otherwise. Andy Reid now is a Hall of Fame first ballot. If he doesn't get Mahomes, he'd have 0 Super Bowls right now. And I think that's an
yeah,
interesting conversation that yeah, Mahomes is probably MJ, but he's not MJ without Andy Reid.
right.
And I think it matters. I don't think we give it's the only reason the Bill Russell thing bothers me is, where you go when you're drafted absolutely matters. And it's going to
Yeah, if
affect your
Purdy
whole
didn't go to the
career.
Niners, he would not be playing.
Probably not. I mean, he took 2 injuries, and I think that says a lot too how you evaluate a quarterback and where that quarterback can flourish because the offense they're in. Because especially I see this in the media, we have this weird thing of like, well, you can put anybody in the Niners offense, they do well. It's like that's not true. That's definitely not true. And people forget that when Garoppolo was doing well, we were running for 250 yards in the playoffs. So don't act like it was this explosive passing offense. So I don't know. It's just weird to me how we kind of evaluate these things. Like I don't want to take anything away from Mahomes, but you need a good coach. You need a good offensive coordinator, and you need a defense. Like that was a great. I will keep saying it was a great pivot by them to give him such a good defense, knowing they couldn't pay the weapons that they needed. So
Yeah.
I agree. They're just a juggernaut of a well-run organization, even if it doesn't necessarily look like that on paper. So, yeah, I think we'll see. It's going to be interesting. I don't really know if any. I don't see either of these teams saying anything too spicy. I really don't. So I don't think it's going to be that interesting
No.
what do they call that, Radio Row or whatever. I think it'll be way more interesting the national media just because it is all of a sudden now Purdy because he did something impressive. To be fair, everybody's singing his praises. It's like, I appreciate you guys kind of giving him the credit, but I'm not a huge fan of the week to week. We're gonna, have our
Oh
flavor of the
yeah.
month. That just bugs me, but I get
It,
it.
it's it's one of the reasons why I actually respect Nick Wright because he was on the Chiefs the most, if not the whole year, of being one of, if not the top team. Because it's like he had made like everyone loved the Lions and they lost the next week. Then everyone
Mm-hmm.
loved this team, they lost the next week. You know the
Yep.
Philly, everyone loved them. They lost to the Jets.
Yep.
So it's like
Jets
it
beat
is a
some
week to week.
shockingly good teams.
It is a week to week league, but at the same time, like it's because everyone does need a reaction. There's these shows are
Yeah.
going every day instead of every other day or whatever. So they have to
Or
have
once a
this
week.
level of content.
Because we're like,
Yeah, once a week.
we don't, no, I'm not doing this every day. That's not going to happen.
No.
I think
Yeah.
that gets you in trouble where, understandably, if you're a pundit, you can't watch all 32 teams. You can't.
Well, and you end up saying stuff that is dumb because you've run out of things to say.
And they're expecting you to have something to say. And I get part of it too. Some of the shows they'll tell you like, listen, we're trying to take opposing sides and have differing views. As long as they're more like transparent with it, it doesn't bother me too much. But when they act like, this is my opinion, you're like, well, yeah, I don't really know if you actually believe that because there's no way you actually think that's true. But I think it'll be interesting. We'll be here next week. We'll see kind of what pops up. We might have to kind of fill the show with some of our off-season topics because I do think it's going to be quiet. I don't think it's going to be that interesting
We got the Pro Bowl and different awards and whatnot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the
We got
awards are going to be
MVP
interesting.
and Offensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year.
They may need to change when they give MVP away because it's going to be real awkward this year.
I actually don't think like Lamar deserves it because he's the best player on the best team, but like I personally also don't think Purdy deserves it. It's hard for me to then give McCaffrey the thing because he got two MVP candidates. You just don't get to win.
Sure.
It's hard to say like anyone stood out as MVP. So it's like
Yeah.
we need to figure as a quarterback. But then if we're going the next skill offensive player, if there's like two and Tyreek, well, they kind of split votes. So then do we go CD?
Tyreek
No,
didn't
Dak's
even
in
make
the
the top
discussion.
five.
Right.
Josh
So,
Allen snuck in there.
which is funny because he's not a Pro Bowler.
Well, and I would have been okay with Purdy. And we'll probably end on this only because he broke the franchise record in 16 games, and there was he had like 4 different games where he had over 140 passer rating or something. I don't remember the exact number. So, but to your point, it wasn't like Rodgers that one year. It wasn't like Mahomes. It wasn't like Brady. So I do understand like if that's our standard, yeah, we didn't have anybody who knocked it out of the park this year. So, but. Maybe that says more about how we're trying to evaluate
I think that's
this.
the defenses too, though.
Sure.
I think it's how the defensive has switched.
Yeah, I think we are in that lull. I think you'll see it. It'll wrap back around. As C.J. Stroud, Jordan Love get older. I think we're gonna see more teams rise. We're gonna have that same where, like this year was light in number of quarterbacks who were wowing us, and I think that's gonna. And again, we'll see how does Purdy continue to develop. Obviously, he's got a little bit of that Steve Young in him. Does he continue to kind of showcase that? Does that become part of his game? We'll see. I think it's going to be interesting. We'll have some stuff to talk about. I think we have some good, like you said, the Pro Bowl, I think awards. I think that is going to be interesting to kind of see what happens. The timing, I think, is unfortunately awkward because I think if I was to give it to a quarterback, it'd be Lamar. So the right after his performance is unfortunate, but it is what it is. It's a regular season award. It's not including the postseason award, which maybe it should. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird.
Why do they take so long to announce these things though? It's stupid because, can't we all just put it in at once and then that's the vote and it's there and it's automatic?
I think they
season ends and we're. Because, if it's going to be the top team anyway, guess what? They're going to be on a bye.
I think they like it for this week. I think that's why they do it. And I agree with you. I think it's dumb. But it's the same reason they're not fixing the refs, is they know we'll watch. They know we'll talk about it. So they don't have any reason to change anything, unfortunately. But, yeah, I think that's good for right now. I think we've covered plenty. I think we're going to have time. If anything pops up, well, obviously we'll talk about it. But yeah, I think it's going to be real quiet. I don't see either team really stirring the pot. That's just not the personality of the teams. They may get feisty before the game, but I don't see Radio Row being very interesting unless someone outside the game has something to say like, Cam Newton did. But I think on that note, we're going to leave it. I have no idea when our dad was possibly maybe not going to join us. I really don't know what happened there. He's an interesting duck. So I might find time. I'm unfortunately busy for the rest of this week with meetings as my work is transitioning a little bit with some stuff. So I don't know. It may be a random time. We'll see. I don't know. We're playing it by ear, honestly. So hope everybody has a great rest of your week. Hope Rob stops the sniffles. I hate being sick.
Oh boy.
So hopefully he feels better. Hopefully the little man feels better, and we'll talk to you guys next week, same time as far as we know. If something changes, you'll be able to find us. Peace out, everybody. Have a good rest of your week.